who are you shooting for? Who's the cocktail for?
Gents.
Okay.
Cocktail syrups. Do you know Tim Jones?
Yeah, he put a thing on social last week looking for help with content.
Yes.
He and I are supposed to talk soon.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Figure that out.
He's driving to the Keys today, so
Okay.
he'll probably need a few days to get settled in.
Yeah.
So what did he do? He totally changed up his whole business plan model, right? Because he's not just doing gents. Do they own Boondogs?
Mm-hmm.
He's a partner in Boondogs.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Rebecca did the design, the layout design for Boondogs, or consulted on it. I mean, he's always done advertising, but these were just side businesses.
Okay, cool. And you shoot all that stuff too?
Some of it, not all of it.
Like bourbon labels and...
Yeah. So my question is,
Are we live right now?
Yeah, we're just kind of chilling and going, whatever. So as a creative, a lot of times, whenever you first start, you say yes to everything.
Yeah.
I would imagine you took that similar journey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you remember doing in the early days?
Well, when I was doing primarily weddings and some portraits, I mean, that was my main focus.
What year would this be, by the way?
I shot my first wedding in California in 2003. And that's when I figured out photography could be a viable business, seeing the market and the industry out there. But I'd done a few things in Kentucky before I'd moved back out there, just for friends and whatnot, just small little weddings or gatherings or whatever. But that was all film.
Yeah.
So transitioning to digital very early and doing that in California, I was kind of ahead of the curve. So it was a nice time to come up in the wedding industry, especially on the West Coast when there wasn't as many people doing non-traditional photography,
Yeah.
We were shooting digital instead of medium format, and, you got more than 240 clicks at a wedding. And weddings were kind of becoming a self-expression at that time, culturally as well as, somebody's personality.
Yeah.
So it was fun. But at the end of the day, I was just talking about this to somebody else. It's like you kind of have to use your gut feeling. If you say no to a client, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because if you have that gut feeling, you always know like it's going to be worth it in the end because they're not lining up with your personality.
So
or they're gonna be a
what
pain
was your
in the
first
butt.
no that you remember? Because obviously, like you said, there's a gut feeling. It's either they want to pay you nothing, or it's a really weird request, or something like that.
Well, I'm a yes man, and having a big family, like I didn't turn down a lot of jobs, but there was a few years kind of before the housing bubble kind of crashed in LA that I was able to like pick and choose more of my clients. But I remember the ones I should have said no to.
Like what?
Well, it's funny now, because when we
just,
talk about weddings, Victor's like,
typical
do not
bridezilla.
put my name in that hat.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, well, that was a while ago, but yeah.
I mean, it was amazing.
Bridezillas? Like how?
Right?
Like what do they do?
Man, just
Is it the bride or is it the mom of the bride? Or is it both?
it can be both.
Okay.
I would think both.
I love.
I've seen too many of these say yes to the dress shows
Come
where
on.
it's like mom is living vicariously through the daughter
Of
and
course,
the daughter's
yeah,
in the middle of like trying to have her thing
But
and make
usually-
mom happy. Yeah.
Usually, when you get a groom that is very overbearing or type A personality, that's
Okay.
even worse than like a bridezilla. So
I didn't
that's
think
kind of
about that.
something you have to watch out for.
Yeah.
But like I love weddings. Like I'll still shoot one a year.
Yeah.
Maybe
Mostly for
two.
just good friends now.
People that I know.
you know.
Yeah, people that I know.
I know your type.
Bailey Hancock.
Yeah, Bailey, right? Bailey Ray.
That's funny.
But it's like I still enjoy it, but now it's on my terms.
Yeah.
I almost walked away from photography about 8 years ago and just was going to get a regular job. But then when I was able to transfer a lot of my clients into commercial work,
Regular
Yeah.
job. Is it regular job?
So why? Like the hustle and not knowing where
I was tired of
your next
commuting back
thing-
to California,
Okay.
to do jobs. I mean, I was gone a lot, every other week at a time, 10 days, just to kind of span jobs back to back. So I kind of started taking less weddings, and it was kind of before really the social media kind of kicked off, and I was able to blend a couple more passions together, bourbon, photography, food,
So how did you start that though? I mean, did you actively go out and say like, I'm doing the wedding thing. I'm going to go find the commercial work. Did somebody just kind of ask you because they saw the wedding stuff and it happened naturally?
That's a good question. One of my really early friends when I moved back to town that I met was Justin Thompson from, at the time, Bourbon Review, but now Justin's House of Bourbon, and he has a couple other businesses. But I was working on their magazine, and I kind of used that as a platform to introduce myself to some other bourbon people, whether it was a master distiller or a blender or somebody that did marketing for them. And then, of course, I met Jen, and we've been doing 4 years?
Almost 5 years now. This will be fifth year.
This is the 5th year, yeah. 5 years as Scout Guide, and then that's introduced me to a lot of business people here in town.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just kidding.
Well, it's all about the networking,
it's true.
As you know.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. But I remember when I was helping out at Proof Fitness.
Yes, yeah.
And I just shot volume 4. And I was looking for a new photographer, and Victor's like, I want that gig. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Let's chat.
So why did you take that gig? Did you take it because you wanted to work with Scout Guide? I'm going to put you on the spot. Or did you take it for the networking?
Honestly, I didn't know anything about the Scout Guide.
Okay.
But that doesn't say a lot. I mean, I don't read a lot of local publications typically. But it was something that once it was in my hands, it had a great feel and great look. And I didn't really know what it was about even the first year that I shot it. But now I kind of have more of an understanding, and it's great to know local business owners, whether it's, for me to refer friends and family or to use myself, on a daily basis. And
it's, it's 100% just, it's a vanity publication, right? So every photo, it's all photos. And so it's really a great portfolio for any photographer that works with Scout Guide for their work.
Yeah. It's creative portraits, is kind of what I would put the classification in.
Yeah. So what's it like when you guys are shooting together? I mean, obviously we shot mine earlier, so I got to see a little bit of the dynamic on set together. But, a lot of times you're driving the creative, and here it seems like, Jen, you're driving most of it, and you might come in with a little tweak, maybe, right? Yeah. But so what is that like? I'll ask Victor first. So from your perspective, what's that like, kind of taking a step back and letting somebody else take those reins?
It's kind of nice on this project because, sometimes there's only so much creative juice in the tank, right?
Yeah.
And they're not actually my clients. They're really Jen's clients on this. For my clients, I would charge a lot more for coming up with the concepts and executing everything. So I kind of look at her as like the art director, She comes in with the concept. She's worked with her client to form the thing, the opinions and the ideas. And then, we execute it together, good communication. And then most of my tweaks are like technical changes, like, we can't shoot there because, this lighting or that lighting. Compositionally, things like that. And then every now and then I'll have another idea. It's like, well, this spot really is not working. Let's try over here or whatever,
Yeah.
But I think it's really important. I mean, for, people listening out there, like if you work with, it's about that respect too, like because in like what I do, you have to be able to, like, I have to check my ego at the door at certain times when we're talking about a client where maybe I've loved the concept and I have worked with Victor enough to know like certain things about, like he said, composition. And if the lighting, I can't have a person standing in this one location, if we're going to shoot this direction, all that stuff. And I try to have all that ready for him when he shows up, keep it efficient and whatever. But I think that like, if he were to come in, and he has come into some of the sets and he's been like, no. You can't get upset, you got to be like, okay, why? But I've learned a lot listening to him. And so like that just helps me get better every year.
Yeah.
Being more prepared for when he does show up, that sort of thing.
But it's also like a matter of, okay, what kind of shoot is this?
Right.
Like,
I mean, it's from start to finish.
Do I need to bring some lighting gear? Is this an hour set up and shoot? Or is this going to be, hey, it's pretty straightforward, natural light. We're in and out in 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So there's also that, expectation that I think she's learned over time to like prep me for like, hey, this is in a dark basement.
I was going to say that.
Right.
Was it Stuart Mercer? Was it his shot that had a bunch of the little lights and stuff that you had to put around?
That one was crazy.
That was a cigar bar.
Yeah, that one was tricky.
Amazing.
So that was my poker table.
Okay.
We lugged upstairs, and the thing is heavy. It's 8 foot with bumpers, like handmade. I made it. And then
you just do everything, don't you?
I try.
Kind of a Renaissance man for real. We haven't even gotten into the cooking. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. But that was fun because we, he had a bunch of guys in cool suits and.
Well, let's back up to how that concept. So like at Scout Guide, we have a creative marketing meeting, and we talk about like how every year it's like how do you see yourself being photographed? And most people, I mean, our retention rate's like 99%. I mean, most people have been there for a long time. So when we shoot people this year, they're already thinking about what they're going to do next year.
Yeah.
And so, Stuart was like, so have you seen that dog photo where they're all sitting around the poker table, the famous,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, what about if I get my clients, because it shows short, tall. And if you look in that photo that,
a lot of diverse
sizes and suits. Yeah. Somebody has on a 3-piece suit. Somebody has on like,
the cowboy.
Yeah. So there's like lots of different textures and styles that Stuart can do. So that's kind of where it started. And then it goes into like, okay, what do we need to bring? Like Victor said. And that one, it's like, well, all right, Jen, that's really dark up there, And so, he just.
What's like the most challenging one that she's brought you to? Or where you walk in and you're like, oh my. The most ambitious.
I think I know
Let's
that
put it that way.
from last year.
Well, one of them was the
Red Mile, which actually turned out amazing.
Great. Well,
but you were worried about it at first.
The Red Mile was tough because where we originally wanted to shoot was just dark and
lots of fluorescent overhead lighting, which is
awful. And I hadn't brought any lighting because I thought we were shooting maybe like about the track or whatever. I didn't know.
And then he gives me this. There's a look that I get.
It was a casino,
and
is it like slightly pissed off? Like,
I really want to call you a certain name right now, but there's clients around. But we're gonna make it happen.
But what we did was we actually used the lights from the gaming machines, to illuminate the models' faces.
Were they like neonish or
yeah. So a little bit of color balance.
I can't recall the photo. I know I've seen it.
It had a vibe though.
Yeah.
So it was like you just wanted to be like, oh, that's a casino. Another one that comes to mind was in this dark kind of building. Was what was the photographer's name?
Who were we shooting?
Girl. Bailey was our model.
Anna Nicole.
Yeah.
Portraits.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was in the building in between, right behind Bicycle Face.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The big brick building.
I don't know what that building is, but I know where you mean.
But luckily we had a couple LED lights in the car.
That one was tricky, but again, no one else would know that. You would never know that looking at it in print.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So lighting.
Magical. He's magical. I always say that too. I'm always like, it's fine. And then I'm always like, we can fix it in Photoshop. And
so have you learned your lesson?
That too.
Just roll up with lights in the car. You're ready to go.
I always have them now.
But I do always tell him, okay, here's what we're going to do, But I will say, like, Victor's like, I get approached by photographers literally on a daily basis. Like, can I shoot Scout Guide? Can I shoot Scout Guide? Can I shoot Scout Guide? And I'll give some people like a chance to shoot a couple people, every year. And it's just, there's just a certain, again, back to that sort of, and I think ego's a bad word, but I don't think that people understand there is creative direction involved. There is a relationship that's been years in the making, and people want to be shot a certain way. It's not just, again, we're an annual publication. We're not a monthly publication where people are just walking into your office shooting you for the month, you know, the editorial that goes with your story that they wrote about you. You know, it's telling a whole year of work that these people, these small businesses are doing.
Yeah.
And so I haven't met anybody yet that can capture it the way Victor can. I mean, he really can. He's very talented at it.
Thank you.
And being able to, you know, have that like swap. It's changing things at the last minute too. It's complicated. And it just always seems to work.
That's experience right there.
That's what
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's
100%.
not necessarily how long you take. I mean, if you
That's right.
have a clear idea of, you know, what you want to accomplish. But one thing that comes to mind when Jen was saying that is like, I think a lot of times artists are kind of just too close to their work or opinion. I mean, that's why you have agencies, right? In the commercial world, like that's the go between the client and the creatives, whether it's video, photo, illustrator, you know, whatever it is, writer, like all those things, right? So it's easy to be like, "Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. It'd be better this way, you know? But I learned that a long time ago with weddings. It's like, at the end of the day, it's a service. So it doesn't matter if they want me to just shoot the old grip and grin family photo, you know, like you're paying me good money to be there. I'll shoot whatever you want, you know?
Yeah.
So there has to be that balance between like your work as an artist and what you artistically want to capture for the client and what they want, you know? So I think if you have that balance, it's a little easier.
That's a good point. Because like, yeah, Victor doesn't consider the Scout Guide publication each year not his work simply because I came up with all the creatives, you know? It still is very much his work. And, you know, I think that it is hard. I mean, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like everyone after COVID, I feel like thought they were a photographer. Like that's kind of when a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm a photographer. I can do this. I can do this." I think that, and that's true, but I think that there's just a lot more that goes into it, you know. And like to Victor's point, a lot of the clients think, because with local publications, I know that when they do those editorials, and I hear this from my clients, and I know from having worked with, you know, quarterly publications and stuff in the past, that photo shoot for that one article, that they may take 6 photos for that one article, that photo shoot can take 6 hours for some reason now that I'm doing this. I don't know why. Because, well, it lends to not being planned out, because a lot of my clients will say like, "Oh my gosh, our photo shoot only took an hour. We're already finished." And we're like, "Yeah, we're done." Because
a lot of legwork.
Yeah, I mean, if you plan it and you have all those details ready, photo shoots shouldn't have to take all day.
Well, it's important too. They have a business to run. They got a life to live.
Right.
I mean, the photo is super important as well, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, it's great that you pick up that slack and basically, you know, solve that problem for them.
And it's also a different goal. Like we're capturing one portrait that you're going to use for an ad or a publication versus trying to get a lot of diverse content for social that you need over 6 months or, you know, something like that. So, you know, going in with that clear picture is a little bit easier.
So how do you bring up social, like for gents? Is that what that's for?
Yeah. Okay. Most of his stuff's social. Gotcha. But that really revolutionized, you know, the commercial work for me was social media. You know, once Instagram really became a viable marketing platform and a sales tool, you know, capturing data, things like that, and big businesses started spending a lot of money towards it, that really revolutionized my commercial game, because then I could approach companies with social media retainers and, you know, things like that to create content. And it was just a game changer. You know? And
so
that was probably
like you could just
8-9 years ago, something like that.
It was like 2016, something like that.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Wait, is that right?
Roughly.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's almost 2000. Yeah.
So you use it as a portfolio, basically?
I mean, not necessarily a portfolio. It's just like they know they need it. And they know they need a revolving door of content. So why not have somebody on retainer that just creates stuff frequently?
Yeah. Sorry, I mean for you as a sales mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything else. Like, you know, you put less time toward your stuff than you do everybody else's. So I hardly ever shoot anything for myself anymore unless it's like of my kids.
You could just shoot yourself for me. He always has to have a photo in my book.
I do. I always have
once a year portrait.
One in there.
Set a timer and run.
He does, literally.
Oh yeah, it's like remote control.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Duh.
You have those too.
Like typical dad. Like.
But you know, I don't update my website and my Instagram as frequently as I should. But one thing that I have been doing, I feel so old saying this, was like, you know, my daughter showed me I could repost somebody's post to my story, and it makes it really easy for me to grab people's work. I mean, my work that I've shot for clients that they've posted. And
so like going to Gents or something else. And
Buffalo Trace, you know, Bardstown Motor Lodge, like, you know, Goodfellas, like, and then just, oh, I shot that, boom, upload it to my story.
Yeah. By the way, the Bardstown Motor Lodge stuff that you did is great.
Oh,
yeah,
cool. Thanks.
Really
that place is literally around the corner from my in-laws' house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've been watching that reno happen for many, many months.
Yeah.
Have you eaten
to check it
over
out.
there?
Oh, Toogie's.
What is it,
amazing.
Toogie's? Yeah.
You should definitely go.
Okay.
You should definitely go.
Cool. Yeah. I need to go over there. Bailey Ray was in that shoot.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize anybody else. Who were some of the other
Was
people?
Haley in that? From
Haley
Morton
Potter.
Yeah. I thought I saw her.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Anthony. But a lot of the talent were just kind of friends and family of the group.
Gotcha.
There's a couple different groups involved on the hospitality side versus the build out side.
Yeah.
But it's a great property. They're doing some good stuff. They're actually going to have about, I think, 7 more locations in the next couple
The
years.
restaurant? Or
The hotel group.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2 in Frankfurt.
Was it Common
one-
something?
Common Bond Group is the creative behind the styles and, you know, the build outs and stuff. And then Wayland Ventures out of Louisville.
That's right. Yeah.
They've developed a lot of big buildings in Louisville. They're behind the.
How do you feel about that? With like Bardstown is, I forget, it's like 14. It's not that many people live there.
No.
So it's a very small community.
Right.
Where it seems like everybody knows each other, but then you bring a conglomerate in to sort of commercialize it.
I wouldn't call them a conglomerate. I mean, they're still kind of
Local.
Kentucky-based company.
Okay.
Being out of Louisville, but I think it's great for tourism. I mean, I have several groups that come in to visit me personally per year, whether it's friends from California or other places that I've
The
lived.
Victor Sizemore fan club.
They just excuse to eat well and drink good bourbon, you know, or family, you know, or friends of friends, you know, all entertain, you know, because I love showing off Kentucky, and that's part of like what I love about living in Lexington. But a lot of times Bardstown was a day trip, you know, and that's going to change that. Now it's going to be like, oh, well, let's spend 2 nights down there,
That's true.
you know, instead of going to Louisville and spend a night or two, because we always use Lexington as home base and hit distilleries in between and, you know, throw parties and whatnot. But, you know, it's a game changer. And then there's another project that's going in down there. It's the old Holiday Inn. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have a spa, and it's going to be top notch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The Bourbon Festival this year was set up differently, of course.
It was
tickets
with the tickets, yeah.
And I know there was a ton of pushback from the local people. They felt like it was totally taken away from them, and now it's become this commercialized thing for outsiders to come and enjoy.
I didn't love how they did the ticket system this year, but I don't usually go to the Bourbon Festival.
Yeah.
I have done some work with Bardstown Tourism last year, and so I'm excited about everything they have going on. So I'm sure they'll get that figured out, all the parties involved. But one thing that's exciting is the Bourbon Guild that's going on down there. My friend Sam Lacey is president, and they're doing some exciting things. And then there's a couple more like restaurants and bars popping up. My friend Newman Miller, he used to be with the Harrison Smith House. He just sold his property, and he took over the kitchen at Scout and Scholar, but then he's going to do a cocktail bar as well.
Oh, cool. What
and
happened to the old Samuel's distillery? Didn't that one? Wasn't that
It's
one
still there.
Is it opening?
Yeah.
They never officially opened, did they?
I think so. I think so.
You know the red.
Yeah.
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 I'm pretty sure.
Because that
they
one
did.
guy that used to work, I can't remember his name. Took Ryan, somebody.
I have no idea.
It's called Old Samuel's, but I didn't think it opened officially yet.
They haven't done the renovation, but
Oh,
you
okay.
can tour the old grounds
okay.
and stuff, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Looks pretty cool too.
It is. Yeah.
It's a cool town. I mean, obviously, Bourbon being the central thing that's going on in Bardstown. It's exciting to see what's going on. I think it's some growing pains as the locals start to figure out what does this really mean for our identity.
sure.
And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my wife's family lives there.
Yeah.
So, you hear some of the complaints from them, but
Well, everybody's gonna complain.
I think
about
until
something.
but I think until it comes to fruition and they really see what's going on and how that actually impacts their own personal pocketbook.
Yeah.
I think right now they feel like some of the opportunities are taken from them.
Yeah.
But I think overall it's going to be a great benefit.
Well, I heard a local talk about like, oh, here's what you need to do. You need to serve Toogie's fried chicken so you get all the locals back and this and that. It's like, well, Toogie's was closed for a lot of years. She sold the property. They named it after her. She still lives behind the restaurant. They've done several like things to honor her name and tradition, but it's like you could never make the fried chicken like she did.
Right.
So why try? Like,
Yeah.
and also that restaurant is not really, I mean, a lot of locals eat there, but it's like it's for a more modern, cuisine, people coming in to taste bourbon.
Destination kind of
It's just not the
situation.
same. It's
Yeah,
not
but
gonna
I
be the
mean,
same,
there
yeah.
will be locals that are there, on a weekly basis too,
Yeah.
that want to try something new and different or whatever. But it's not for necessarily for the traditional, people that have lived in Bardstown for, families 100 years or whatnot.
Yeah.
Not saying that's, good or bad, but there's still a lot of local mom and pop places left in Bardstown, which is great, and you never want to see them go out, but
Yeah.
you also want to see some more upscale things come in as well, and even in Lexington, like I want to see nice places or niche places pop up in Lexington, because right now two of my favorite restaurants are in Bardstown. I mean, Willett Kitchen Bar and Toogie's. So it's
Well, and, it is growth, which is a good thing, I mean, but you get pushback, especially I think with just like you said with locals. But speaking of food, Victor needs to talk about how great of a cook he is, in addition to photography. Because seriously, it's no joke. Like,
I want to know
have you seen the pictures on his Instagram sometimes?
I want to know what's the
He doesn't just make dinner.
what's the most wild thing you've cooked? Because
I don't know if I can say
game is like a
I was like,
Oh, I'm serious.
what is it?
I cooked something this past weekend that may turn some people off, but I'm not going to say.
what?
Okay, well now you have to
No,
say
you
it. What
have
is it?
to. As long as it's not like a human body or something. Like gross. What?
Well, he didn't say no to that.
Well, that's true. He just looked away. But okay.
No, let's just say I've cooked a lot of wild game and.
What you have to tell us now.
Can't.
Oh God.
All right.
Okay.
What kind of cat?
Dogs,
I have to know.
body part, like not animal body parts, animal body parts. Something weird.
I mean, I grew up in the country, right? So, like, you don't want to waste anything. So, if
Gross.
something gets killed,
Eat
like,
it all.
You want to cook it, right? I mean,
I want to know in
mean,
the
you don't
United
have to cook
States,
it.
what is the furthest? What residence is the furthest from a Kroger or something else?
What?
You probably don't have the answer to that.
What did you
I
say?
do not.
But
What?
like he made the statement like, well, I grew up in the country, and so we're not going to waste anything. And so my thought is, you got to be in somewhere like Kansas
Oh,
or
like
Nebraska
how far
or
away
something
are you
that's
from a
super remote,
store?
where that's
I mean,
actually
I'm sure there's a
a
Walmart
fact.
close.
Because like you probably live 2 miles from a Kroger, you could just go to Kroger and buy some stuff. Eating a cat doesn't.
But
It's not
Kroger costs
1792
money.
anymore. You put, what'd you say?
Kroger costs money.
That's true.
You did not cook cat.
Okay, so we had Bobcat tacos.
Oh, it's
okay.
Bobcat. Well, that's kind of,
Okay. Well, that's different than, meow
Is
like
that
from the
illegal?
next door neighbor.
No,
like, is it illegal? Are they endangered?
no.
Okay.
So
Do we need
That's
to
interesting. How do you, okay,
Yeah.
see, I don't understand how you even cook something like that. Because that means you got to like do the whole thing and like
yeah,
a deer.
I mean, I'm not gonna go into
Yeah,
detail.
no, I don't want you to. It's
But do you
okay.
treat it like it's any other protein?
I mean,
sort of?
I cooked it like it was pork shoulder,
Mhm.
like carnitas or something.
What's your
Got it.
favorite thing to cook?
I mean, that's like saying like, what's your favorite
Like,
movie,
oh,
But I always put it like this: like I go through phases. So, I'll get on a cookbook and I'll cook a lot from that cookbook until I feel like I have pretty good grasp on, this chef's cuisine, right?
Mhm.
And do some fun stuff. So like right now I'm cooking from a book called Ottolenghi Test Kitchen. So there's a lot of fun stuff in there. A couple years ago, I was cooking out of this book called Gunpowder. It's like a modern Indian cookbook. The chef's based out of London. So, fun little.
so
things
what's the
that-
most interesting thing that you've been able to cook with like the least amount of like
Spices
stuff?
or anything?
Yeah, like, or
okay.
even like
mean,
utensils or
A lot of the
Yeah.
open fire cooking is kind of fun to add flavor without using a lot of, spices or marinades or whatever like that. You can kind of use that smoke and char to like your advantage depending on what you're cooking. There's a chef, Francis Mallman, that's become famous for that. He's in Patagonia, but he has a restaurant in Miami, and he's been on Chef's Table and some of those type of things. But a few years ago, me and some buddies, we built like a fire table to kind of do that type of cooking outside, and we've used it several times. And then kind of COVID hit, and it's been more, of a chore kind of getting it out now, because it's like one of those things where it's like you're not going to get it out for 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
But you can feed 40 really quick,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have that for the farm or whatever,
Where'd your interest in cooking come from?
I think like just growing up, like helping my granny and seeing her kind of do a bunch of stuff, around
Like,
the
were you
house
young and in the kitchen with her?
Yeah, she made
making
it fun. I mean, she was like the sweetest, granny, like, right?
Yeah.
Like always doing something fun for you, baking, for you. But one of the first things I learned from her to cook was chicken and dumplings. And I remember I moved to California for college, and people were asking me about it, whatever. And I was like, oh, I love chicken and dumplings, whatever. And they're like, can you make it? And I'm like, no, but when I go home for Christmas, I'm going to learn.
Is
but
that
like-
not something that you can find in California? Is that why they asked?
it's not the same as like Southern chicken dumplings.
Okay.
Like
Yeah,
up
try
north,
and knock
they do
off.
those big biscuit dumplings.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
That's not the same.
That's
Yeah.
not the same.
But also like I was fortunate enough to have a friend growing up that had a cabin, kind of in the woods behind his house. It was his grandpa's, and it was always stocked with wild game, venison, fish that they would catch, whatever. And so, being teenage boys and hungry all the time and playing, football, basketball, and baseball, we'd always go up there and cook something late night. So I was kind of usually delegated to do that. So that kind of like on a basic level, frying fish or frying potatoes or, venison and gravy, whatever.
Yeah.
Like we'd make that type of stuff. And, but, my passion's come a long way since then, Like,
What's like the most basic thing that you cook that you really enjoy, Because a lot of times it sounds like it's a passion, creative sort of space for you.
yeah.
Yeah, like I couldn't see
well,
you
but
like
making like a
something-
peanut butter and jelly
It's
sandwich.
one of those
Yeah,
things.
exactly,
where,
right? Like toast. I don't know.
it's one of those things where it's like photography when it started out, like I was doing it as a hobby and a passion. I did 2 road trips cross country, shooting national parks on slide film. Like that's kind of how I learned to do photography.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them I logged over 8,000 miles. You know, I was gone 30 days, just driving around, you know. But over time, you know, like photography's become a job. So really the cooking and really what it boils down to is I love to entertain, you know. I love to have friends over. I love to make sure they're being fed well, drinking well. You know, maybe they're trying this wine or this whiskey that they've never had, or they've never seen this cocktail. They've never seen the beef tallow candle, you know, like, or whatever it is, right? So the planning and logistics behind entertaining, I love, you know, all the silverware, all the serving pieces. If I need to make something, you know, like if I'm serving, you know, quail egg shooters with chipped country ham and chives, then, you know, I make a stave that has little cutouts where the quail egg stands up so you can bring it out to the table. And
So in the follow-up interview, we're going to have that.
We're going to eat.
can do
Yeah, I was going to say,
That's a quick
can you
one.
cook
That's
that for
quick.
us?
That's quick. That's
All right, that sounds great.
You know,
And anything else you'd like to bring, which is
Right?
you know. Just
And how do we
whatever.
not have bourbon right now? I mean, it's
I
after
know,
11. It's fine, right?
What? Yeah, why
Okay.
didn't you?
Yeah.
Should have. Got a.
yeah, I'm getting a little parched. I mean,
You have a whole
you know,
We should go.
plethora of options.
We should
a
get
little
some.
pour. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah,
Yes, you
Okay.
should.
I'm kind of him.
What do you want?
Let's see.
How come you don't shoot more of your food?
Well, it's hard to shoot and be cooking at the same time.
Like when it's
you
done,
know?
like because you don't post any of that really. You just do stories.
Yeah, it's hard.
But you should.
I mean, there's a million things up here. There's
Yeah,
already one that's already open.
What about that Russell's? Is that all right?
This guy?
Yeah.
Probably. If it's not,
If not, you can grab that Elijah Craig that I brought for the gin shoot. But Russell's, that's a go-to, you know, like love Russell's.
I love
say
this
sorry
place.
if it's
You've
not
been to
a-
the Stave, right? You've been to the Stave? Rebecca's other spot? Yeah, place is awesome. But like we were just talking about, I want to go down to District 7. Have you been down there yet?
I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna take one down Saturday morning
Oh, cool.
if it's open during the day. I gotta check that one.
Yeah, I don't know if they are or not either. But yeah. Yeah, and you do. I feel like Scout Guide needs to have like a member dinner, and you need to cook all the food.
That'd be fun.
I think that's what we need to do,
Shallow for it.
and we should do it at.
Would you like one?
No, thanks. I'm okay. I know you guys. You do it. Well, I really probably should,
Just
shouldn't
double me up.
You need it, Lance. You're not going to drink that?
No, I'm good.
I? Okay, fine. I'll have it. Twist my arm. I could pour it in my
I was
coffee.
gonna say you could put it in here. Double me up.
I'll pour you. That's a lot for me. And I'm not a big straight bourbon drinker.
We keep talking about it. Might as well drink the damn
I
thing.
know, right? You were making Brandon and I was getting thirsty.
All right. So out of that entire wall, why Russell's? What do you like about the reserve here?
All their products are just very, very solid. I mean, even Wild Turkey 101. I mean, obviously, the old kicking chicken, you know, from college, like brings back memories. But their stuff is just across the
that's
board amazing. You know, this is a good intro bourbon for people that, you know, are past like the 80 proof bourbons and they're seeking something with maybe a little more flavor. 110 proof. A lot of their stuff's around 10 years old, you know, all the bourbons. And they're just an amazing family and story. I mean, you know, Jimmy Russell, you know, master distiller for 60 years. His son, Eddie, has been working there, master distiller 40 years. Now, his son, Bruce, you know, has been working there for a long time. So you got 3 generations of Russells that are master distilling. You know, Jimmy started there when he was like 20 years old. An incredible story. And they're owned by Campari now, which is, you know, the Italians, and they're making a lot of changes, but it's just a good.
Victor is a
Company to
wealth
be.
of knowledge. I'm not joking. Like he knows
Yeah.
so much about
at least
everything.
about bourbon.
Well, and
I don't know about
food. I mean, he'll
photography,
just like
but-
rattle off stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel really stupid.
We recorded an episode with Eddie sitting in his office.
Really?
It was
That's
like
did?
2 years ago, 3 years ago
Very
now.
cool.
It was before COVID.
Okay.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
Well, I
Jimmy
did.
walked by and got
Oh,
to say
yeah.
hey. And
He's awesome.
that was, you should have been there because you would have been able to help
Well,
facilitate even.
there's a author named David Jennings. I'll just give him a little shout out. He's written 2 books with Wild Turkey and Russell's being the focus. One was the history. It's called From Rippy to Russell, the story of Wild Turkey. And so it goes back to the doctor that founded Wild Turkey. And it was called, his name was T.B. Rippy, I think, from Lawrenceburg. And so it starts to the history all the way through to modern day. And then the second one was more of a follow-up book of reviews and different notes and tasting things about all their iterations of products from the 70s all the way till now, and their special releases and whatnot. So I shot both of those books, and they include cocktails and things like that. So those were fun projects.
So how'd you get hooked up with that particular project?
I met David through the bourbon industry, friends of friends through the bourbon industry. He would come to town frequently and taste, at different places. And we met at Goodfellas one day, and he's like, I want to run some ideas by you. He's like, I'm going to do a Kickstarter for a book. And he was still working his kind of day job at the time. And, a good friend that works at House of Bourbon, they were good friends. And so he did an intro, and the rest was it.
Yeah, that's cool.
You need your own book.
Who's going to write it?
Well, just like a photo book too.
It's like a
your
portfolio basically of everything,
bourbon
repository.
Scout Guide sort of that a little bit, but I mean it's not. But it's like one that's all the stuff that you've shot throughout the year.
Some of the favorite ones. It's shooting literally like millions of photos. Like it's just hard to sort through,
catalog it all.
That stuff, and also know what is good and it appeals to people, because like I might have my favorites, but then like somebody will look at something else and be like, oh, that's super cool, and I'm like, oh,
well, that's true, that's tricky.
Okay,
yeah.
And website's a good example of that. It's like hard to even just sort through and update the website, because it's like,
well, that's true. That's even like with after we're finished shooting, I always pick, because he'll send me at least maybe 16 to 30 photos per client, which he's probably shot 10,000 more than that at the actual shoot itself, but he'll just not that many.
These are on pretty low volume.
But I mean, he may or may not, but that's all I get, thank God, because I'd never get through them all. And then I only send the client like my top, and then I go through them and I look for my top 4 pretty much, usually no more than 4, because we never get the book to print. If people get more options, they can't make up their minds. And then after all these years and things, it's like I always tell them my favorite out of the top 4. And, it's like you just said, it's like, it's hard. I'm just glad they trust me, because it's like what I like, they have to just trust that I think it's the best one because this is what, Victor and I changed this one because this is why. Or lighting in this one's a little different, and here's why. Yeah. And then, because if they don't agree with me, and once I tell them those details, they're like, oh, I see that. I get it now. You're right. Yeah. But, so the perspective of what, but I think you should just put together some things of all the stuff you like, It's already been to print, so they already picked the one they like.
I couldn't even imagine starting that project, though, and having to go back through. You'd have to have some sort of focus, because you have so many.
I couldn't imagine.
I was going to say, anybody looking for internship,
to go through photos?
Yeah. Do you ever go back and look at old stuff?
Sometimes. I mean,
like, does it live on an SD, or you put it on a hard drive?
Mostly servers
at this point.
At this point, but unless it's like project focused, like if I'm doing a bid for like a large project, and let's say it's interiors, then I'll go back and pull stuff I've shot over the years. It doesn't matter how old it was, as long as it like looked good and fit the vibe that they need to see. So whether it's like a restaurant or a hotel, or just maybe the interior of like a church that I was doing a random project or something, but I'll put together kind of portfolio PDFs along with my quote, just to show them samples of work. So that's really the only time I get a little blast from the past.
Yeah.
So
like when you go on vacation, Are you like, you whipping out the old camera?
Man,
Are you just with your
Camera.
phone?
So-
Do you just take a break?
a lot of people will ask, like especially friends will text me random questions. I get it all the time, probably like 10 times a year. Like, hey, I'm looking for like a affordable camera, to take on my vacation or honeymoon or, whatever, do this. And I'll be like, iPhone 14 Pro.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I'm not carrying my big Sony, like I just use my iPhone. And inevitably, like I take my camera on every vacation just in case I need it.
What's a
Sometimes
need?
I don't even.
When's a moment
when I
that
get paid.
constitutes?
When I
Okay.
get
Okay.
You never know. You
if
could be
it-
walking through the hotel and somebody.
Well, it's more like,
Well, you already
hey,
have connection or something.
I have this like last minute need for content. Like, can you shoot this cocktail? It's got to go out for a press release. We need it like in 2 days. Hey, if I'm on vacation, I'm at a hotel or Airbnb, I'll shoot that sucker,
Yeah.
and then send it over and get paid.
Yeah.
So,
There's a need.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing is like I can kind of work from anywhere.
That makes sense.
Like
Yeah,
what
that's true.
what inspires like your vibe whenever, especially for like a gents, for example? Like,
Because you are in charge of all that creative, right?
I mean,
They kind of give you
Tim's
the concept idea.
Tim's really hands-on with that type of stuff. I mean, I have some clients that just say, "Oh, just do whatever you want," like just keep stuff coming, and that's fun, and I get some cool opportunities with that. But Tim is very good on shot lists. Like, I need this because I'm going to promote, this black walnut bitters old fashioned.
do you prefer that
You know,
because it gives you exactly like what to do?
I like a little bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
like I was saying about there's so much creative juice. Like, there's a different charge
I was gonna
for
say.
when I'm coming up with all the concepts and everything.
Yeah.
So like Blackwood Bourbon is one of my clients, and I can have a lot of fun with them because they just want to build a lifestyle brand. And Guinness, the owner, is very into like, bird hunting, and he's been to Africa, and he's shot like water buffalo, different things like that. So I can kind of mix in some of that personality with his brand, even though like the branding itself is kind of like racehorse because he owned training stables and a farm out in Midway.
How do you mix water buffalo and racehorse? I'm just trying to picture how you do that.
Lifestyle. But I've noticed with your with the bourbon labels that you do
I'll have to go
shoot,
look.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see as many people necessarily. Obviously, not as the focus because the bourbon's the focus. But so is that intentional? Like you don't do as like you'll just have a hand, or you'll have people kind of faded out in the background.
Sometimes we'll want that human element slightly. Once it gets more like summer, entertaining months, you'll see a lot more people pop up because we'll have a gathering and shoot some lifestyle where people are cheersing or doing things. Some brands just don't like to show a face. They don't want to pigeonhole their, demographics, whatever. And then some do. So it just really depends on their focus.
Makes sense.
You brought up the iPhone. Do you find that to be an enemy, a competitor of sorts?
What volume was that? 8, 7, volume 7?
I'm 7.
My ad was shot with the iPhone.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he might answer this differently, but I think back to my comment when I said after COVID, everybody was a photographer.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the photographers that have come to me wanting to shoot, a lot of them will say, I'm just going to use my iPhone. It's like, because to me, the other thing that we haven't even touched on that is super valuable and that Victor is super, super good at, and maybe not everybody is as a photographer, is the editing, post photo, like pre-production, like when we go to print. I mean, that's for me because our pictures have to be pretty flawless. I mean, it's full bleed, full color. There's no cropped out. We don't do 4th page ads or quarter page ads or whatever. We don't do any of that. So they have to be really perfect. And then if somebody says, I would kind of really want to look like I'm 20 pounds lighter, or we've even had, he doesn't like this though. He hates this discussion. But editing it's a skill to it. Some people think it's super easy, and it's really not.
Right.
Like we were about to go to
Put
print.
a preset on it. It'll be fine.
Right, it's no big deal. But we were about to go to print one time, and I had a client call me last minute, and the book was at the printer. And this is also why I tell people not to photograph every single person on their staff, because the book does not get thrown away. It has a long shelf life. To be careful who you're photographing, like if they're not an owner or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get a phone call that they needed to remove a human out of the picture. And I'm like, well, let me see. First of all, let me see if it's even doable. I'm going to call Victor, because it all has to do with like what's behind them. And like, I'm learning all these things, And luckily there were just trees, which were easy to put back together because it's kind of like a puzzle. But the photo editing, to me, like hiring a good photographer and having a relationship with a good photographer, it's not just about how great quality photo they can take.
Yeah. Well, in the tool, I mean, a phone is just a tool, just like the camera is a tool, right? But the experience that you bring to the phone,
right,
like in your hands, is going to be different than the average person,
right?
Which is, that's the make or break, I think.
And not to say that that people can't take great photos. One, you're absolutely right. And like Victor mentioned, he took his picture with a phone for a volume, but there's that editing is crucial for sure.
So why the phone? Why'd you use that?
Because he was as prepared as I usually am.
I had a day of drinking in Bardstown, and Jen was texting me all day. I need this photo
Jen was texting me
by
all
the end of
day.
the day. I need this photo by the end of the day. I'm like, I'm out of the office. Like, what? And finally, we ended our day at Bell's rooftop, and it was perfect lighting, and I had a Cohiba, and I was like, this would be a good shot.
It is a great shot.
My friend took it. That was right when I think the iPhone 11 or 12 Pro had just come out. And we did it.
And really quickly, did we talk about this? Did you know that it would print that well? That's a big, because it was a 2-page. Did you know that? Because going from digital to print, people don't realize it's pretty tricky.
I'd printed some iPhone photos 5 years ago, bigger than that.
Oh, okay.
That looked fine.
Well, it's in 4K.
That's good to know.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
And I didn't even I didn't really push the file that much. I mean, that's really the difference between there's a lot of differences, between the lenses and all that stuff. But one of the main differences is pushing the files too. Like with some of these, raw files that we're getting now, like we have a lot of latitude. Yeah. Obviously the more you nail it in camera, the better.
So people listening, what does pushing the files mean?
Like if you overexpose or underexpose, like the dynamic range, things like that, of editing the file. Because what happens is, like, if you underexpose something, when you adjust the lighting and bring it higher, it gets noise, color, grainy. There's a lot of different things. The skin tones are kind of muddy and muted. Like there's a lot of different things that can happen as you're editing the file.
Right.
I was going to say, and like grain is such a big thing right now that people are purposefully doing, because they're trying to make digital look like film and everything else. So you could almost get away with it now.
Right. Exactly. But it's like, one thing I love about shooting digital is, like, some people ask me, like, oh, do you wish you used to shoot film or whatever? And I was like, I just like things being sharp. Like when I shoot digital, and especially the Sonys, that's why I switched to Sony. I was Canon for 15 years, but it's like, it is sharp. You nail the focus, it's sharp. But like shooting weddings and stuff, like back in the day, like you could get away with a blurry photo or a fuzzy photo or something that's just not quite tack sharp, because it added to that, like, oh, the skin tones were nice and milky, and it's got a aura to it or a vibe, it was like, okay, that's just out of focus, but whatever. Whatever.
You can tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the landscape for creatives right now is very interesting, especially like Chat GPT coming out. I think Google has an AI musician platform that's going to come out.
Wow.
But basically you can just tell it, like, I want to have a song that's maybe 13 minutes and 14 seconds long in the style of XYZ, this kind of tempo with meter changes and all. Like, you could plug all that in and boom, there it is.
Wow.
I haven't seen any results from it to really know, But like
their camera on
we're
their new phone looks pretty crazy too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even oh, now I'm gonna blank. What's it called? The photo version.
Of what?
Starts with a D. The AI.
Drive?
No.
Or
You can. It's AI. So you can go in there and you say like, I want a picture of Victor Sizemore wearing a New York Yankees jersey, standing at the Jersey Shore, smoking a cigar, and like it'll figure it out.
What?
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Obviously, it's got to.
Hey,
like,
let's do that for the Scout Guide book.
Oh yeah,
Let's just say
the AI version of it. That would be hilarious.
That would be kind of fun. Gosh, it would be so much easier to come up with a creative.
Right? But like,
Because I do people,
the
I'm always
world's
like, I
your
want to put
oyster.
somebody on a boat. So there we go.
you could.
You could.
Now, obviously, like the AI has to be able to pull from, the rest of the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
So that person, those things that you're putting in as a prompt have to be like real. It's got to be able
Somewhere.
to find it, but
Correct,
it's going to
yeah.
continue to get smarter, of course.
Wow,
So it's going to
yeah.
be wild. And so
Gosh, that would be kind of fun to put together a book like that.
like Getty Images, Shutterstock, a few others that have made their entire business model on the back of owning the rights to these photos.
Right.
Right.
They're under
that
threat
gonna
now
change?
because
Yeah.
now you could just say like, hey, I need this kind of photo, and it might not be exactly like somebody was standing there, but it's going to be pretty darn close.
Right. It'll fool 90%.
Yeah. And now you don't have to pay the rights to Getty anymore.
Yeah.
So you can bypass it.
Hmm.
Ooh.
And now
Yeah.
then that answers, the whole thing of like, is this plagiarism?
Oh, right.
Because, well, you didn't develop it, but it's technically not from anyone else either.
I was going to say, yeah,
Right.
for pulling
So-
from other things.
The creatives, they said early adopters of AI said that creative people would be last because it's such a human touch to things like photography and
But
film
do you
and
think
music.
that most of that stuff will have the capacity for doing traditional like ads and campaigns and things like that, or is that something that's like a quick hit for social use, or online use? Like,
I think it sounds more for social right now. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at first people were saying that creatives would be last because of the subjectivity that goes into the creative space.
mm-hmm.
But if you really kind of dig down deep at subjectiveness, you can actually game that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we can all agree what looks good, what doesn't, compositional rules and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just plug those rules in and you make them possible,
Yeah.
well, a machine can figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Yeah.
I mean, instead of paying a photographer
But it's like anything
$3,000
else.
to come in for a half day or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you say you got to hire a model, you got to have lighting, you got to have an art director, and like now this is $100,000 campaign for a 2-day shoot or something.
But it's like
Well, now
anything
you
else
can just
that's
put in a
good.
prompt and get something that's going to be workable.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of social being really fast, do you really want to pay all that money to have one photo? Or do you want to put it in for AI to give you something that's pretty close? Because the photo's only going to be out there for a very short period of time anyway.
Well, that's debatable.
So,
Short period of time. Maybe.
yeah. But you know what I mean? Like these are some of the arguments
that
that are
special
out there.
touch. It's almost like the handwritten note still goes a lot longer and a lot
Yeah.
further than an email.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, that's going to be a solution for some people, but I think that there's
Mm-hmm.
just going to be lack of finesse on that a little bit, depending on
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think that early adopters, just like with crypto, they were like, oh my God, to the moon. Like, we're not going to have any
You're not going
dollars
to
left in
jail.
our
No, I'm
pocket
just kidding.
anymore. Yeah. But of course, we know that there's going to be a practical application for something like,
Yep.
Right.
cryptocurrency and NFTs and everything.
Right.
Early adopters go way off the deep end and think
Right.
that, oh my gosh, this is happening tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's going to want to do this all the time. I mean, way down the road, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, then, that it's asking really deep, difficult questions.
Yep.
What's the function of a human being at that point? Society is flipped upside down at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you talk
This is
about
Brandon when he
robots
gets-
doing
this
the
is when
thing.
Brandon gets really
Like,
deep.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do all day? Like,
Cut it back a little bit on that whiskey.
I just went
Cut it back a
blank.
little bit.
I just,
thank you, Russell's Reserve.
I just glassed over. Sorry, what?
But it's just one of those things where it's like, what do we do right now? We come home, we're with family and things of that nature, or we're at work. Work is often what we identify as. If you got robots out there that are doing a lot of this manual kind of stuff, then you have what's left after the manual stuff. Well, creative things. Well, now we're talking about AI potentially taking over the creative. So then it's like, so what's left? So I think all of that's going to be interesting as things play out.
What about editing? Do you think that would be a solution more for editing, like than the actual photography itself?
There's already AI built into some of this stuff.
I mean, the technology in Lightroom right now is pretty amazing, but you still have to know how to use it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like an automatic thing where it's like, hey, retouch that person's face, which that would be cool, if it could be like, but then
there's neural filters in there where you can make somebody that's frowning in the original photo smile. It'll add teeth. Like, it's wild.
That's weird.
I haven't seen all that.
Yeah. Like now.
Does it look natural though? Because like I had one.
But it'll get better.
I did
like with anything.
I did like
better.
like I mentioned earlier, there's occasionally, well, not occasionally, but every volume, every year I do have a different photographer that just shoots a couple people. Obviously people that Victor, usually new people. Mm-hmm. And one year, this was probably volume 7 or 6, I can't remember. But I give them strict rules. Like there's no editing. Like when I say that, I mean like don't apply makeup to anybody. Don't do, you can, a vanity edit, it's just like smooth the skin a little bit or whatever, but don't change them. And there was a photo that I got that was clearly, and it was so fake. Like it looked so bad, like you could tell. So I think that adding teeth and changing a smile, it's not going to look natural. Like, I mean, this makeup was so bad. Like it was so obvious. And in print, it was even worse.
I really think at some point it might.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think that Adobe would release it when it looks like so bad and it's completely unusable. Mm-hmm. I think, of course, you got to start somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
But there's, what's it called? Sensei? I think it's the technology that's behind a lot of the stuff inside of Adobe's products. I mean, inside of After Effects, you could sit there and you could take a picture at the busiest beach in the world, basically, and it'll just find people and make them go away, and now it looks like an empty beach.
Wow.
And there's all sorts of stuff that you could do. It's just, it's pretty wild. Because, I mean, what you have to do in the past. You got to sit there, you get the pen tool, you're like zooming way in at the pixels and cutting people out.
You got to put it back together.
And then you're like going to take this shade that's over here that's pretty darn similar and try to make it, well,
right.
It sped that process up.
Yeah.
And it knows.
Yeah.
Which is, because the same decision making you had to make, you could teach a machine. I'm looking for a similar Pantone color or a hex code, right? So it's like, well, we know that pixel is that, so just put that here.
Yep.
Why couldn't a machine do that? That's what it
true.
does.
It'd be quicker.
So it's just,
I could
it's
learn
wild.
To do that, and then you wouldn't have to do all the edits. Totally kidding.
I'm already putting you out of a job. I'm going to shut up now.
Oh God, I would never want to do any of that. No. But that's why I always joke with them, and I'm like, when we're at the photo shoots, like people always say, like, "Well, I just want to do this." Like I said, the 20 pounds lighter. I'm always like, "We can do it in Photoshop." Yeah. Victor's always like, "Shut up."
Yeah. Well, and I know you have to run probably. You got to run in 30 seconds because that's going to be our time. But
it's okay.
I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day. I know all of us could sit here drinking bourbon, hanging out all day.
So what is your Victor for you? Like, I mean, do you think in 5 years? What do you think you'll be still doing?
5
like
years.
Shooting? What do you think you'll still be shooting for me? We know this. You'll still be shooting with me.
I was going to say you should save some of those numbers from earlier. Photographers. No,
whatever. Don't think I haven't. I have. I know you might get hit by a bus.
I got at least 1 or 2 more years in me. No, I mean, I think, just more campaign work, I think, with bourbon brands. I love the tourism stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm embarking on a new client this year. And it's a group that has taken over the Origin hotels. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be traveling a little bit for them, which will be nice.
Are they going to keep it Origin?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. They own They own about 5 Origins and maybe 5 other properties right now.
Cool.
There's 2 more Origins being built, one in Baton Rouge and one in Atlanta. So that'll be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe just like the same thing, but you're just different niche markets.
Yeah.
Sort of like
I mean,
bourbon. You'll probably could always continue to shoot.
you know,
bourbon
I like the idea of having, like yourself, you know, like it's the Scout Guide, but you're going to have 2 now, you know.
Right.
So like a hotel brand, you know,
Yeah.
they've got 3 hotels, not just one.
Yeah.
So kind of that type of deal, like clients that have multiple assets that I can just be their go-to person, and you know, I do something for them every quarter, every
Right.
month, or whatnot.
Nice. Yeah. A little more consistent too than
Yeah.
like one-off brand labels and things
Right,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Random question. What's your advice to, you brought up people wanting to be photographers now. And I mean, you know, the technology is getting less expensive.
Yeah.
Because it used to prohibit people from being able to do it.
Right.
But now, I mean,
Right. But also the knowledge, the education, you know, like,
yeah, YouTube and everything else and all
Yeah.
the courses that are out there.
yeah.
So what advice do you have to new creatives out there that are just getting started?
I think at the end of the day, like, you know, doing something you're passionate about is like probably one of the most important things, you know, like don't let somebody dissuade you just because like maybe you're just doing it part-time or doing it on the weekends, or a lot of professional photographers like get upset like when somebody like cuts their price to get a job. It's like, well, you know, you don't know that person's situation, or maybe they're just learning, or maybe they really need the extra money. Like, you know, if you want the job, you cut your price too, you know, like, and I think at the end of the day, there's enough business to go around for everybody if you're doing the things that you're supposed to do. And so it's like, just go for it, you know?
And I've had like interns, like I've got one now, and you know, I'm letting her shoot things, but she always asks me to come to Victor's shoots because she wants to watch what he does, how he does his lighting, you know, because she's like, she has on her own, she has like a person that works with her. And she even told me, she's like, how do you manage the like delegation? Like if, you know, on the shoot, like on the set, like if you are disagreeing on something, I'm like, you just do it. Like you just, you know, and she's like, well, I need to come and see that. So she came to yours, you know, and she came to one yesterday, and she said it's just really helping her become a better photographer, you know? So I think that advice too for people that just like sit and, you know, go to photo shoots that other people are shooting that are experienced like Victor, so that you can see, you know, exactly how they kind of do what they do.
Yeah.
It's not stealing secrets because you still got to learn how to do it on your own.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Cool. Well, obviously appreciate you coming by today.
Yeah.
I know it
Glad
took a
to
little
be
bit
here.
of time to make it happen, but
Only
we'll do a
couple years.
follow-up and you'll cook.
Yes.
Hey,
And
sounds
we'll
good.
drink.
He can come, maybe
sounds
come
great.
to like
Yeah.
Melena's, because Melena's going to cook her
Yeah.
pesto and marinaras.
be-
You want to
Sure.
come out? You should come and just hang out. Why
I
not?
know, right?
Yeah.
Just
that'd
be another
good.
person on the show.
Good.
Good stuff.
I'll make
It'll be
like a
fun.
Negroni on the side or something while
there we
Oh,
go.
there you go.
you know, cooking us an Italian meal.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll put Lance to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Sweet. Well, thanks.
Awesome.